Hello, everyone. Welcome to the One Conscious Love Network. I'm here with Jennifer, and Jennifer and I are actually in the same geographical area, but we met online. And oh gosh, I'm so glad that we did because you're such a beautiful person. I'm so happy that you're here. And so, with that, Jennifer, please tell everyone who you are and how you shed your light in the world.
Thank you. Well, first, Melanie, I mean, we were just talking behind the scenes for a moment, but thank you for doing this. Like, it is amazing the amount of work that goes into being able to provide a platform for people to be able to share their story. So I'm sure I speak for many, many people and everyone watching this that really appreciate all you're doing to be able to spread your one conscious love and connecting us all. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Ah, yeah, I'm Jennifer Maki, and I wear a few different hats, but One Conscious Love is at the source of everything for me in my business, professionally, personally, in relationships. And so I think that's what drew me to you, Melanie. I saw your group. You know, I always feel like those serendipitous threads, those things that happen that are on purpose. And so I saw your group pop up and then your request for speakers. And I don't often do this. I speak for a living, but I don't kind of often, I conduct interviews online in my podcast, etc. But I don't do a lot of these, but I was so drawn to what you were doing that I just felt like it was a connection. So and
Thank
my background's kind of my original background is in psychology and communications. And when I was thinking about what I would share today, it stems really from loss. So when I was
you.
young, between the age of 16 and 26, six of my friends passed away. And I lived in a very small town. And so you can imagine the impact of that.
Mm.
In fact, one, was at 17. That was Kirsten, the first young girl that I knew, and I'd grown up with her in public school, and then she was killed in a car accident. And it changed everything for me for the trajectory of my life because, as happens when any of us experience loss, it's like, where is that person for the next 60 years of our lives or more? And so, what does it mean to pass on? And we have this limited, fragile existence that we need to grasp and grasp hold of. And so, Kirsten was the first, and then I lost other friends. And so, at that pivotal age between 16 and 26, I actually had an experience with each one of those people before they passed. And then I
Mhm.
had a vision of them or a dream of them or different signs from them after they passed. So you can imagine, that changed my life. And so I began, first of all, to think about my life as not being permanent. And so, how could I embrace every single moment not as if it was my last, almost as if it was my first, not with that dread or doom, but just if, I were gone in 6 months, what would I be doing with my life right now? And if I was doing it, I'd keep on doing it. I still ask myself, 50 years later, that same question. And so it changed the way I embraced life. So while I went to traditional university, as soon as I was done, I moved to the Cayman Islands. I wanted to live in a tropical island. I wanted to do what other people talked about doing or dreamed of doing, but I wanted to be able to kind of test that out. So I moved to Grand Cayman and I went for 6 months and lived there 3.5 years. I, gleaned everything that I could. I ran a restaurant and a nightclub. If you can imagine, that was a very different life. But it was just like meeting all these kindred souls from around the world. And I would say that now I've had my own business for 20 years as many different things, but communications really about how to communicate better within yourself, how to communicate better in relationship, whether that be your family or in community contribution or as a team working with companies. And then how do we utilize that and leverage that to better serve the people that we serve personally and professionally? And so it all kind of stemmed, although it stemmed from running a nightclub, it was really just everything that I learned about actually the expats that live there, the fellow travelers that were on that journey. And I kind of did a social experiment when I lived in Grand Cayman, and I would ask every person I met, so, what brought you here? What drove you to make this leap to live in a foreign country? All the challenges and the beautiful opportunities that come of that. And there was a thread that really a golden thread that flowed through all of that. And if I had to
Mm.
put a name on it, would be that one conscious love from another human being or one conscious love within yourself. To
Mm.
know that you wanted to have an experience that was deeper and extraordinary. And then usually those people had one individual in their life that loved them so well and believed in them. And
Mm.
so that kind of sparked within me to try to be that love in the world and to try to be that thread of, encouragement and inspiration for people. So I started that journey. I lived there for 3.5 years, and then I lived in San Diego. And I actually went back to PR school and I did my graduate work in public relations. And people kind of thought I was this weird, like they look at me and they go like, why are you going back for PR school? Like, what is that? And it was just really, from that young age of losing those individuals, but also, a whole other element of my life that was both challenge and beauty. I always had this voice inside of me that was just so predominant. My sisters are 10 and 13 years older than I am, so I really was like an only child, and we lived on a farm, and 20 acres, and I would just go out and I would listen for that voice everywhere I went. It was in nature, it was in a butterfly, it was in our horses, and I learned to trust that voice. And I didn't know or even call that anything to do with God or creator. It was just this voice that led me, guided me, protected me, encouraged me. And when I learned to listen to it, then beautiful things would unfold. And if I didn't listen to it, I would learn amazing lessons. And so, I
Mm.
think maybe you can relate to that, Melanie. And I think all, people that are on this, spiritual, but so I really use the word soulful a lot. My publication is called The Soulful Way. The soulful as opposed to the spiritual or religious, just because of some of those words can be really weighted. And so, but listening to that voice is at the core of it, that one conscious love, that divine love, that guidance, that voice within. And so, in the public relations industry and in communications, ironically, that's not really always where people spin from, right? Because the spin doctors, right? That PR is that element of spin doctoring. And so, in my career, I perhaps made a name for myself because I wasn't telling someone to be something they were not. I was encouraging them to be and really honor who they authentically are. And
Yeah.
so, even in the public industry, public relations industry, when I was working in San Diego, I remember at one point I was working with the New York Times, and I was working with a client, and they wanted the first interview for the client. And I said, absolutely. They said, we want an exclusive. Please make sure the person doesn't interview with anyone else. And I said, absolutely. This is the honor system. I understand that. Of course, I honored that. At the end of it, this New York Times journalist said, I've actually never had someone tell me that they were going to do that and actually follow through. Like, we just,
Oh,
there's
wow.
always people trying, like they would pitch it to me and then they would on the sly, and I
Mm.
just didn't understand that. But that really became who I was in the industry, about authentically connecting, whether it was with a client or with, the media, but really authentically, when I would say in integrity, when I would say what I would do something, I would do it. And so that I worked in the media, I worked in public relations, and then I just didn't feel like, I felt as though I was contributing to the gross national product, but I wasn't contributing soulfully to something greater. And so I actually pitched in the towel in San Diego when I was, about 29. My career was kind of soaring. I was doing very well for myself, and I just decided I needed something more. So I actually moved back to Canada, and I became a camp counselor and a camp director for Easter seals, children with disabilities and their families. And there's a whole serendipitous weaving of story that came about. But a gal that I went to PR school, she just said they're looking for a camp director. And I know I had been thinking about running a motivational camp for children.
Mm.
So I don't know where you are in the world, but they're hiring. And so I did. I went back and I worked with Easter seals. And then I lived in Austria for a while. And then I went back and I ran the communications department with Easter seals eventually. And that led to me gathering these gems about quality living versus quantity. If we don't have quantity, what are we doing of quality? And I worked with hospice patients and their families. I worked with children with disabilities and their families. And all of that I gathered to really learn from, glean from them. And then all those gems I put into programs and
Mm.
writings and workshops, and feel very fortunate in a career that was based really carrying on the legacy of those I lost. carrying on the voices of those that I knew both in hospice and in working with children with disabilities to carry on that reverberation, that ripple effect of that one conscious love that they taught me, and to carry that forth in the world. And so that's what I aspire to do every day with my clients, and aspire to do through my writings, and through the book that I wrote. So that's kind of that's the platform of the foundation anyway of where it begins. So
It is so beautiful. I love it. And I'd say you're doing more than aspiring. You're doing it, and the work is so beautiful and definitely well received. Yes.
thank
So
you.
for everyone watching, what are the ways that they can work with you? Obviously, buy your book, get to know you, and then what happens after that?
Oh, thank you. So yeah, so this is the book, Just One Soulful Thing.
Mm.
Um, I didn't plan on writing that book. I was writing another book for about 10 years. So I did all these workshops. I actually work with healthcare companies. So that's kind of
Mm.
how it started, or where Just One Soulful Thing came from, is Calgary Health Region in Alberta, Canada, has about 22,000 employees. And I was brought on by a friend of mine who was doing leadership work. And he said, Jen, would you be willing to offer a workshop for that nurses, doctors, dental association, dental assistants, whatever that is in the healthcare industry? Would you be willing to do these workshops for them? And of course, I said a hearty yes, and was scared out of my mind and had no idea how I was going to bring it together. But the universe, that voice inside, said, say yes, figure it out later. So I had t-shirts made up at one point. Yes, say yes. And then on the back it said, what was the question? Because it was just about saying yes to the opportunity.
I love it.
Doesn't mean you don't be very clear about your no. That's a whole other workshop, because it's very important. All
Yes.
the good news for the yes people out there is that I often talk in my workshops about the fact that saying no to one thing just means saying yes to something else. So you can still be a yes person, but of priority. So yeah,
Great.
so I started working with healthcare companies, and really this concept 20 years ago about listening to the voice inside of you, listening and honoring that one conscious love, self-healing, values, action alignment, work-life balance. Those are fairly, not new, but fairly new to the healthcare industry. And
Hmm.
so when I was hired to do these workshops, the gal that ran it, Anina Mitzner, was this amazing woman, and she had this booklet of programs that she offered in leadership development for the Calgary Health Region employees that would rival any university. But she said, Jennifer, I've never run one of a personal nature. And this workshop is called
Mm.
Seven Truths to Living Your Yes Life. And yes stands for you evolving spontaneously. And so she said, I really don't know if we're going to get any interest for this workshop. So, let's just play it by ear. And I was like, no problem, that's okay. So she put it out on to the employees, and she called me about 45 minutes after she posted it and said, would you run 3 more sessions for it,
It's
because
full.
like it's blowing up. And so
Mm.
it was amazing. I ran it for 3.5 years with Calgary Health Region, and then eventually came back and actually did a hero workshop for them for the provincial conference for both Calgary and Edmonton to over 1,000 employees. So it was really fun. So that kind of built a program for me. And I actually
Mhm.
homeschooled my children utilizing that program. I thought, when I had children, if you'd asked me if I'd homeschool, I would have told you no way. I love my career. But once I had our boys, I just felt this calling from within. The voice said, apply everything that you've learned and put it into a program for your children. And let's see what happens to a life when they have that kind of training right out of the gate. And so we
Mm.
started something called the Mad Hero Project, because I felt a little bit crazy walking that razor's edge every day, not knowing if it's going to work, building it, not having, anything to tether me down, just kind of leaping off the edge and going for it. But I built that, and then that became a program for the kids. So for over about 12 years, 15 years, really, their whole lives, we ran this Mad Hero Project. And you can find it on YouTube. You can see the little, interviews with our little kids. We were doing mindfulness training, so Mission Me and Mission We projects. So Mission Me is about what you do within yourself. Mission We is what you do to pull your family together, communicating better as a family. And then we did Mission We projects out in the community, and our boys ran fundraisers for the YWCA in Calgary, and we had parties and fundraisers to raise money for women in the community. and lots of different, took, socks and sweaters to in from the cold. The boys were always involved in these projects of giving back because that's such a big part of that one conscious love and rippling that out to other people. And so all that to say, that was the book I was writing. And then when the boys started to launch, I was on retreat actually on Bowen Island, and that voice said to me, no, it's about, there's so much that you could do, but what the world needs right now is just one soulful thing. And so in about 6 months, I pulled out of all the little bits and pieces that I'd been doing, both volunteering and also, in my business, I put them into the book. And it's a very simple read, cover to cover. So it's practices and rituals. I tell the story. I had a stroke in 2008, in 2019. So I tell the story of that and dropping down into a pretty soulful space to kind of move through that experience and what that taught me. And I actually had heart surgery because I had a hole in my heart. And so I had heart surgery. So I tell a little bit of that story and how just this being present in the moment probably saved my life. In fact, the doctor said that's probably what saved your life. And I could feel the experience. I could feel it moving through me because I was in that conscious, soulful place. And then I talk about the practices and rituals that I've used throughout my life and what I encourage my clients to utilize. And so those practices are all in there. And then now it's morphed into, I have coaching clients. So I work with coaching clients. A lot of them are what I call soulpreneurs. So they own their own business. Some like you, Melanie, where you love your life, you know where it's going, you've got a really solid idea of what you're creating, but you want to take it to another level. And so I work with coaching clients and we talk about values action alignment and we talk about the balance between personal and professional living. And then we build solid plans because I come from both the business world and the soulful world. It's about that return on the investment. So my clients, I know each one of them would say, whenever they invest in me, it's really about how we build a business so that financially, abundantly, as well as personally, you feel as though you're enriched and you've made it back. You've had that return on the investment of your energy and time and your financial investment. So I have coaching clients, and then we're actually launching big dream of 20 years now that my kids are off to university and off to Cortez Island Academy, and they're off doing their thing, and mama is feeling a little untethered.
Yes.
Okay, I have more time now, but it's been a big dream of mine to do international retreats. So I actually
Mm.
serendipitously met the woman that I'm running the retreat in Guatemala with, and so that first one is October 3rd to 13th to 3rd to 10th this fall, and we have about a week left on early bird pricing. So if you're thinking about it, anyone that's watching this, if it calls to you, it's not really a typical retreat in that it's not a busy time. We call it a soulful retreat because it really is about rest and rejuvenation and retreat so that you
Mm.
can better listen to that voice within you. And then you can create the vision and the plans for whatever is next for you. So whether you're a person that's just trying to build your life creatively, or whether you have a business and you're a soulpreneur, an entrepreneur, or you just really want to meet with other kindreds, it might be for you. And so, yeah, we're finding that balance. It's based on Just One Soulful Thing by book. Everybody gets a copy of my new book, actually, which is Just One Soulful Thing. It's a guided journal. So that will be the foundation for the material and the journal that you'll keep and carry with you for life. So yeah, it's really fun. So I think we put links in here so you can find out all about that. So that's really where I'm focused now, is coaching. I'm on Substack. So if anyone wants to reach out to me on the Soulful Way on Substack, I write there and it's free. That's a free publication. I haven't put subscription costs into that. That's where I talk and I do my podcast for Just One Soulful Thing, etc. So if you're feeling the need for support or even just kindred community, then you can definitely find me there.
That's so beautiful. I love it. We'll put all the links in the comments. It's easy for people to find you and find your resources. It's so generous of you to offer it so widely and at no cost. That's really beautiful. And Jennifer, I always ask everyone the same question. What is one conscious love to you? And I know you've touched on it through the interview, but I just wanted to know what comes to mind.
It's everything. It really is everything. I mean, that's a beautiful name for your network, and I think network is a really lovely complement to that as well too. It's everything. My father actually grew up. My grandparents were missionaries for the Pentecostal church.
Mm,
Built the first church in Argentina, and they were really soulful people. But there was that religious aspect of it, and my father really loved, and revered my grandparents. But when he moved back to Canada from the Argentine, just became a spiritual journey. And that was something that my father taught me from the time I was very young, when people really didn't talk about that. We would sit around, I was 10 years old. I just remember sitting around the kitchen table and talking about how God, how love, how spirit is in all things. And my father was
mm,
kind of flabbergasted that people didn't understand that God is in all things. It's not in a book or religion or a place or a church. It's in all things. And that really, I mean, he wrote the Creator's Creed for the United Church. And my dad was on the
mm,
discernment committee for hiring one of the first gay ministers in our small town. That kind of lost a lot of the people that attended that church, because it was in, the 90s where that was a challenge. And now our world is opening up to these concepts. They're talking about them. It's not like it's something out there or new agey. It's we're understanding. And when someone says new age, I was talking about this the other day with a gal that actually flew from Vegas to meet me for the day, and she's a member of Substack. And she flew just yesterday. And we had this beautiful day together, and we were talking about all these concepts.
mm,
But this conscious love is something, it's when they say new age, it's actually something so ancient, right? So when we
mhm,
look back to Sufism, or you look to many of the foundations of the religions around the world, it is that conscious love, that joy, that celebration. And so that to me is the voice. For me, I use the word God or creator, spirit. But it is that thing that connects us all, and understanding that everything that we do, everything that we think, actually affects everything around us, our own lives and the individuals around us and the groups and communities in which we live. It's a really essential piece to get that one conscious love. And so if we can just tend our own garden, if we can just soulfully tend our own way, our own thoughts, then we can ripple out and affect everyone around us. So I love what you're doing, Melanie, and it's so
mm.
beautiful that you're pulling all this wave of people that, just see it in this full light, and that we celebrate it and talk about it more and more and more in our communities and in our companies and in our world. It's very important, particularly at this time with lots of stuff going on. I don't
Yes.
particularly. So what
Yeah.
I have to ask you, I know you're interviewing me, but I have to ask you. So I know you're doing your master's in
Yes.
holistic nutrition, correct?
Holistic medicine.
Holistic
Yes.
medicine. So what made you choose One Conscious Love? What brought you here to do these interviews, to launch this? We have to know.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for asking. For me, it all came from my accident. I had a pretty severe accident hiking 4 years ago now. And the first thing that they taught us in the hospital was meditation. And
Wow.
through that meditation, I discovered that connection that you're speaking of, the greater being. And it just is so special to me since. And so I just felt like the world needs a lot more of this. And that's where this group came from. It's my
Amazing.
little
That makes me so happy.
project.
Like having started in, like, one of my first jobs being in the healthcare industry, where I used to talk about my business was called Center of Yes, because
Mm,
saying the word meditation in those environments, they were concerned about, because it conjured this idea of needing to be in lotus position on the top of a mountain chanting all,
right.
right? So I had to just open the crack and then do the
Mm,
meditation, and then it started centering practices, and then it became meditation. So it is amazing to hear that when you had your accident 4 years ago, that is what they were bringing to you. Like, this is huge. I don't know whether people really understand how huge that is. That was not the way 20 years ago. Not
no, and it
at
is so
all.
beautiful to manage like brain injuries, chronic pain, all of these big tickets, right?
Absolutely.
It was just like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. And it was, yeah, just
So
so
good. It's funny, 'cause when
transformative.
I had my stroke, when I went in, yeah, I was very calm. And the doctor that was telling my husband and I that this is what had happened, that I actually had an ischemic stroke, he was looking at me, and it wasn't typical. Normally you have it on the right side of your brain and it affects the left side. I
Mm.
actually almost discharged me because it happened on the left side. And so it didn't affect the same things that a typical stroke does. It's very rare to have one on the left side of your brain. And that's because I had the hole in my heart from birth. They just didn't know it. And
Mm.
so the gentleman, the doctor kind of, we were in the Trauma One Hospital in New West and Royal Columbian. It's an amazing hospital for heart and stroke. And
Mm.
even that was a miracle because I had no idea that that was right
Right.
where I lived. That's where I just happened to go. And so anyway, he brought us into the room and he was like, okay, so you've had the stroke. And, he said, and I was telling me all about the details and I was just kind of looking at him smiling, like, and he just
Mm.
said, I have to ask you, like, are you hearing what I'm saying? Like, you look kind of peaceful, like you're looking happy. And he goes, like, are you hearing what I'm saying? And I said, oh, I am. Like, I just said, thank you. And I said, you figured out what it was. Like, you could have
Yeah.
sent me home. I wouldn't have known. And I said, I'm in such good hands. And you've told me that you're going to do everything to figure out why this had happened because we didn't know about the hole in my heart yet. And I said, you told me you're going to do everything to fix this. So I'm in such good hands. I'm so good. And then he said, like, how did you know? Because we never catch a stroke this small. And I said, well,
Mm.
I meditate on a regular basis. And so I actually felt it and I described what had happened. And in the book, I talk about there was this crossroads. And my son, who's 7, or I think he was 11 at the time, came running down the stairs and he was very concerned. And I was at this crossroad and I knew I could either step into fear and
Mm.
allow that to just sweep me away to make the situation oh so much worse.
Yeah.
Or I could step into surrender and trust and drop down into the meditation
Mm.
that I would normally do, but now in this extreme circumstance, and just find that river of peace beneath the surface. And when I described this to the doctor, he said, that's unbelievable. That is definitely what saved your life.
Mm.
And so to know that in that moment of chaos, when we would go to the human, very, very justified human response of fear and worry and concern, we have another option. But we have to train for that option. It really is. It's
Mm.
like we have to train. I often, I used to say, oh, it's a beautiful thing to be able to meditate. It's a nicety. It is a necessity. When you spend time in meditation, it guides every element of your life. And now my clients, like, they dip into meditation before they write a chapter. They dip into meditation before they build a business plan. They dip into meditation before they have the conversation with their child they need to have or their spouse that they need to have. And the writing,
Mm.
I write professionally. I write technically for some companies. A very different writing process. And because you're thinking with audience in mind, right? And it's a
Mm.
technical audience, there's an expectation in that. But in writing Just One Soulful Thing, not one word of that book came without dropping into that one conscious love. And then when I read it now, which is the book I needed to write because I wanted to read that book. And now when I read it almost every day, and when I open it, it is like I didn't write it. And it's not new,
Mm.
that concept. That's like every composer, every creator, many, many artists. They say it's like and they may not call that one conscious love or God or spirit,
Yeah.
but it is like it's an out of body experience. Something is channeling through us. And the
Yeah.
only way we channel in whole health, in creativity, really that honors our purpose and our reason for being here is when we learn to meditate, when we learn to drop down into that space, that sacred space of one conscious love. So isn't it amazing, out of that accident, Melanie, something that could be quite tragic, you've
Mm.
transitioned and leveraged that for something beautiful in the world. And
Mm.
it's amazing. Congratulations. And we're so lucky to have you. We're lucky.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It feels like it's just the beginning, but it definitely feels good. Yes.
Absolutely. Anything you need. I'm sure I speak for everyone watching, that anything you need to help build that one conscious love, we're in it. That's
Thank you, love. That's so sweet.
lovely.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. It's such a beautiful, beautiful time. I'm really happy that I got to share it with you. and with
And we will
everyone
get together in
watching.
person, Melanie. We have
Yeah,
that gift. Well, I'm sure we will go for a cup of tea at some point and a wander on those beautiful beaches. And anyone else that wants to come visit us from around the world. And
exactly.
we could do an event. You guys could just come and we could do
Yes,
a conscious event on soulful love and business. So who knows what can blossom from these collaborations.
that's right. Oh, I love it. I love it, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you all very soon.
Bye.
Bye.